said, if you are going to tell a lie, tell a big one. And if you tell it often enough, people will begin to believe it. Goebbels said this and used this technique all the time. Through propaganda, he repeated a lie constantly. Through means, all the means that were disposal in that time. For example, newspapers, or songs, or movies, or many others that were at the time.
This is an example of the posters during the Second World War in Germany. We believe this communicates a strong message since it is portraying a young man empowering the youth. Also, this young man is an Aryan and he's holding the Nazi flag with the swastika. That is communicating a message that only those that are pure in race will have the power.
On this next poster, we can see Hitler's clear intentions on eliminating the Jews. We can see the Jewish man because he has the Star of David, and we can say that he is rich because he's wearing an elegant top hat, which meant that they were wealthy during this time. And this showed very anti-Semitic behavior within the people during the Second World War.
In Great Britain, the Ministry of Information was in charge of all the propaganda that circulated around the country. When Churchill became Prime Minister, he declared that he did not believe that propaganda was really important. However, propaganda was anyway used during the war, and it was able to portray all the arguments and ideals that Churchill had about the war.
This shows that Churchill cared about the country and its people. He wanted to communicate everyone's importance. He did not want Great Britain to split apart, but to come together as a nation to surpass the war.
In these three next posters used by Great Britain's during World War II, we can see that the green poster is encouraging the British to fight for the rights and for the Britain. In the blue one, we can see how important and valuable the British were during the war. And in the red one, we can see that they are telling the British to carry on with their lives and to not be fearful for war.
In this last poster, we can see that the MOY is trying to influence and to encourage the women to do much more than do the housework, take care of the children, while the men are fighting on the war. They're encouraging them to work in the factories, to create guns, ammunition, tanks, and many other things that were really important for the war.
In contrast to Germans' propaganda, British propaganda tried to involve everyone in the war. As we showed before, Nazi propaganda excluded people and blamed the war in a specific community, whilst British propaganda reminded people how important they were and motivated them to never surrender.
The real question is, how did this affect people? When you give trust, you expect it in return. And both of these characters applied ethos, so their audience will start believing them more as they spoke. Churchill always told his audience that he relied on them and that they should rely back on him. However, Hitler used a different technique, and he portrayed himself as superior, as someone who was powerful. So the people would not only trust in him, but they would also follow his ideals and satisfy his wants and needs.
Furthermore, wars can also be seen as a struggle between authority and conscience. As Dave Grossman once said, despite an unbroken tradition of violence and war, man is not by nature a killer. This means that men are made killers during war.
However, the human necessity of following authority makes it easy for the military forces or political leaders to turn people into something they do not want to be. Since whenever conscience fights versus authority, authority wins. Because as stated by Martha Stout, we are programmed to obey authority even against our consciences.
And finally, we're moving to our conclusions. Churchill's speeches told the Tommies to never give up, and they also depicted Germany as the epitome of evil. Turned the war into a final battle of good versus wrong. British behavior towards the war can be also expressed through Churchill's political artifacts, since he always was thankful with his people during and after the war, so that made people appreciate him more.
Joseph Goebbels successfully managed to control the propaganda, control the news that came in and out of the country, and also to communicate anti-Semitic messages that connected with people through emotion.
And why control over press and propaganda was really important. First of all, because it made people trust in the government, and also because it helped them remain calm. But it also is a really important matter that they got to distract people from some events that could threaten Churchill's ideals and desire of keeping the British poised.
Hitler's speeches showed how the Aryan race was pure and was always on top of everyone. He also clearly showed that Germany was unstoppable and that no one or nothing will ever stop them from obtaining what they had lost in World War I.
Hitler would always send threatening messages to his adversaries in order to show that Germany was still powerful. All of these aspects were really important because they reflected in the Germans' behavior. After all, they have to follow the Führer's commands in order to have a nationalist mindset.
Persuasion is a dangerous tool that could cause great damage to an individual or humanity in general. Lives were lost during the Second World War. Cruelty grew strong during this time. We believe that this project was important in order to understand what caused people to act a certain way. Thank you. We will now answer your questions.
And I'm looking forward to 10 players and of course 7 players. But before, sorry, I apologize. There's something that kind of like stuck here in my mind and I want to ask this first and then so I don't forget. And then we go to 10 players, Raul, your tutor. There's something that kind of like made me think a little about what you said. Maybe in the beginning, I don't know if you really meant that or not. You said, do you think, I asked, do you think it's fair to say that the English were the good men and the Germans were the bad men? I kind of like put that at the beginning. So I don't know what you mean by saying that. Should we believe that, or what was the idea of that? Can we say that?
Yes, we understand that it could be a little bit confusing, but what we really meant is that they were persuaded, they were influenced into act a certain way, a way that could be not really moral, that couldn't be right. And in this case, the Germans were the ones that acted in a not really moral way. They were influenced into acting a different way, that they would have acted if they were exactly with their own judgment.
Moreover, even though Hitler was also loved, like Churchill, it is stated in several documentaries that many Nazis feared him and acted because of fear. As the quote states, the wicked men are the ones that fight because of fear, while the good men are the ones that fight because of love. Also, during our research, we found out that the Tommies did not commit criminal acts, while the Nazi soldiers did.
Okay, 10 players.
The leaders had someone.
It's Sarah, if you need the microphone, Sarah.
No, I can speak loud.
Yes, oh. I know you can.
The leaders had someone who helped them wrote the speeches.
No, they actually wrote it themselves. For example, Hitler was born with the gift of rhetoric and persuasion, but Churchill did not. He only had a few ideas. He was an author also, so he had a power of persuasion, but he wasn't as good as Hitler.
They both were pretty good writers. They had several books published.
Yes, but the difference between one and the other is that Hitler, because he had the gift of rhetoric, it was much easier for him to talk. And so the only thing he did was like to write his ideas, and he was ruled by that organization. Winston Churchill, on the other side, he wrote the whole speech, and he always had to reread it. So they were the ones that wrote the speech, but it was different the way they manipulated the speech.
And which one do you think is the best method? I mean, like Hitler's using like propaganda in a
one is the best one, we believe it's Churchill. Because he's not encouraging people to fight for hate, but to fight for love. And we think that that's much better. But also, the one that is more effective and that had more impact in people was Hitler's. He was able to really manipulate them and influence them through hate. So, it depends.
I want to add something else, and it's that Churchill always tried to tell the British that they were worth of something. They had a value, so they would be important during these hard times, and that together they will overcome this problem they had.
And what do you think? Onto what point persuasion is a gift and not something bad? Like, I'm good persuading, it's something good or it's bad? Like, where is the line that separates good and bad?
Well, basically, persuasion is a gift, always. However, it's the way you apply it that can be good or bad. Therefore, we believe that that thin line between good and evil is when you start trying to manipulate the people to act in a way against humanity and human rights.
Yeah, very good questions. Thank you, Rita. Please.
What exactly is the difference between Nazi soldiers and zombies?
Well, the difference is that Nazis fought for hate. They didn't fight exactly for their country, but they fought because they wanted revenge. Because of the Treaty of Versailles, because what happened in the First World War. So they really fought for hate, for winning them out of revenge. Well, what Tommies, they fought for their country, they fought for their honor, for their safety, for their own people. And that is...
Also, the Tommies had they used they had a clean fight, so they never did bad things just like the Nazis did. That they killed 1,000 people. No, the Tommies were clean always.
10th graders and 7th graders are welcome to. We'd like to hear a few more questions. Yes, thank you.
What was exactly authority more persuading than moral? Because I think that Hitler, for example, also had applied a lot of moral in his speeches. He also encouraged people to fight for what they wanted.
Even though Hitler did encourage people to fight for what they wanted, he did not encourage them to fight in a good way. He and all the Nazis committed terrible acts that are immoral in every single way. Also, authority is stronger than moral because sometimes, and we discovered this through political psychology, authorities make us believe that committing immoral acts, we will finally achieve a universal good.
Also, it is important to see that maybe he was telling the people that they had to fight for their country, but that doesn't mean that it was okay to kill and torture thousands of innocents. So it's more kind of like what they are pushing you to do. That is the difference between if you're going to use the moral and persuasion in a good way or in a bad way.
Zombies and Nazis were both persuaded to the war, yes. But do you think the persuasion, the different types of persuasion they had, like involved electric part into the way they fought? And like make
British had the idea that they were fighting to defeat an evil, and that evil was Hitler. So they kind of already had the idea that the Germans were manipulated, so they were just fighting for the safety of their country. They were trying to actually kind of kill them all, like the Nazis actually wanted to do.
Also, the British were fighting for freedom, while the Germans just wanted to create an empire to recover Germany's vital space.
What makes Churchill and Hitler so persuasive?
Well, as we said throughout the entire presentation, what made them so persuasive was their gift of rhetoric and persuasion, and how they managed or manipulated people throughout their speeches, and also with the help of propaganda to back up what they were saying.
Also, they knew what the people wanted, all the things that they had, all the feelings that they had, and they knew how to use those feelings in order to manipulate them. That's practically the key of persuasion, to know the feelings, the thoughts, morale of the people you're going to persuade.
Moreover, they also used evidence to give the people the reasons to fight. Once you have a reason to do something, you do it.
Nowadays, who do you think is the biggest leader who uses persuasion?
The current society.
Well, we believe there are two kinds of leaders that use persuasion in a huge way. Like in a non-political way, we believe the generals and sergeants of the armies, especially in the US, since they convince them to fight a fight that's not their own, to try to conquer or involve in fights that they should not be involved in the first place.
Also, if you're talking about a leader that's like right now, I think Uribe would be a really good example, because he has half of the country like with him, fighting for him practically, and it doesn't matter if he's done bad things or not, if they find proofs that he did. Anyway, they're still there. They still listen to what he says. They still believe in him. So I think that is a really good example.
And Marcelina.
Nowadays we live in a current society that we are surrounded by a lot of propaganda. And Anna asked you that how and when to know that propaganda was bad. And you answered that when the ideals of the propaganda was to act against human rights and human moral and everything. But I think propaganda nowadays makes us to act against us. How do you how do you know that that kind of propaganda is not bad if we're not acting against others but against us?
That is a really good question. However, she asked us about persuasion and not propaganda. We believe that current propaganda can make us to act against ourselves, and that is really bad. We do not think that's a good thing, because whenever, in order to act against someone, you don't necessarily have to act against another person. You can also act against yourself. And that is something that right now our current society sometimes is encouraging us to do. More specifically, not in propaganda, but in social media.
Also, propaganda hasn't changed that much. It's just that in that times it was really obvious, the objective they had. Anyway, you're right. Right now, propaganda can make us attempt against ourselves. But also, also that depends on our judgment of the conscience that we have. And we actually believe one of the objectives of our project is to give you the conscience that you have to really analyze what people say, what you see in propaganda. You have to be conscious of that because they could make you act in a way that could damage someone else or yourself.
Also, that type of propaganda was for the war, and today we see something very different. For example, well, I don't know, but right now, what we see is not like war things or like anti-Semitic messages. We see other types of propaganda, so it's very different as well, what we're seeing today from what was back then in World War II.
Because of time, we have two final questions, I'm sorry. Raúl, and then I want to end with one logical must question.
Well, I'm going to put an end to the shooting gallery, right? So it looks like this. I'm going to give you a scenario, okay, hypothetical scenario. If there happened to be, okay, Churchill or Hitler, like all the characters, okay, I'm saying that by following all these linguistic issues, they would have been able to mobilize masses the way they did.
Well, that depends. Because, for example, Hitler had a great gift for rhetoric. So it was really easier for him to influence people. Of course, with all these techniques, maybe other persons could have been able to persuade people, but maybe not as effective as Hitler did.
Can I throw you a question back?
Sure.
For example, what would have happened if World War I hadn't happened? Or what if Hitler had been accepted into the arts school he wanted to get in? So, I mean, there are many factors that we can see and like think and have hypotheses about it, but never know the real answer.
There wouldn't have been, if World War the First wouldn't have existed, wouldn't have happened. I don't think the World War the Second happened too. Because in one way or another, it's a 30-year period of war. There has been a little bit separation, okay, artificial separation between the two. But you know, the situation and the discomfort of the Germans and so forth kept on after World War the First. So that wouldn't happen. And by the way, if Hitler would have been accepted at the art school, I don't think that he would have been inclined to war because he would have satisfied his ego. My question was based on this: the role of personality in politics and in history. So they had a very specific personality and a very specific gift, most of them. So therefore, it would have been a little bit difficult. But there were a couple of other different figures with the same characteristics that would have worked the same as them.
So finally, to answer your question about what would have happened if they were Churchill and Hitler, maybe someone would have learned to use these rhetorical devices and apply them. For example, as we stated before, Churchill was not born with the gift of rhetoric, however he learned. So if someone like Churchill dedicated himself to learn how to apply persuasion, maybe it would have happened the same way, or maybe it wouldn't have.
Sure, that's your point.
Final question.
Thank you.
Final question. Why did you end up choosing the option of working in English? Was English a handicap? Was it an advantage? And looking at the future 11th graders in 2 months, would you recommend them to enter this experience of doing a research project in a second language?
Well, actually, in my opinion and in my experience, I think that working in English was really good. I felt like at home. I think it was like a very great decision for the three of us. We feel very like in our topic, like how you say, in our subject. So, I don't know, I think it was a really great experience, and it also helps not to forget English, because if you work in other areas, you will like forget English anyways, like in 3 months. So I think it's like a really good exercise to keep on doing this.
Yeah, it's more like to exercise English, and also because it gives you like the opportunity to work in whatever you want. I mean, you have to do it in English, but you can do it about music, politics, whatever you want. So I think that is one of the reasons that probably because we want to keep practicing and do it about something that we love, that's history.
I just want to say